Welcome to the Carnivore Cast, the podcast focused on the carnivore diet and lifestyle, with practical advice from successful carnivores, citizen scientists, and top researchers. I'm your host, Scott Myslinski, and I'm here to speak with experts and experienced carnivores to get answers to your biggest and meatiest questions while helping you live your best life as a carnivore. This episode is brought to you by LMNT Electrolytes. This month, we're switching it up with an exclusive offer that's only for VIP LMNT partners, including Carnivore Cast listeners. You can now receive this free sample pack along with any regular purchase when you use my custom link, which is provided in the show notes or my Instagram link in bio. That's drinklmnt.com/carnivorecast, all one word. And as I said, I'll include the link in the show notes. LMNT electrolytes are convenient, evidence-based, and delicious. And get yours today to help support the show. Thank you.
Trevor Griffith at TrevorLee89 on Instagram is a marine bodybuilder, gym owner, and carnivore coach. The carnivore diet brought him from bedridden and forgetting his family/wife to a thriving, healthy entrepreneur. Welcome to the show, Trevor.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. I'd just love to start with your story, Trevor. Hear more about you, how you found yourself to getting sick and, finding kind of this lifestyle.
Yeah. So I've always kind of been, athletic and kind of driven towards it. Right. I've been doing it ever since I was 13. So that's 20 years. Right. So that's a long time. And initially when I was younger, I just ate to get big. So that was whatever you could to eat, right? Your old school coaches were like, yeah, just put food in. And it was like boxes of cereal and all this stuff. And at the time, no one really said anything as far as, is that bad? Is that good? For some reason, I never got that. And even looking back, I was unhealthy way before it like hit a breaking point. So I did have that, but, that continued. And then I got into bodybuilding and the modeling and stuff. And I call it the bro diet. And I say that because most people will understand, right? Like the chicken and rice and just the plain stuff. And I'm an all in, all out type of guy. So it was like, this is fine. Like, I don't care how my food tastes. I'll just do this because I'm going to look the part. And I did that for, probably 3 to 4 years. And my fat was probably kept under 50 grams.
Wow.
For that time, because I was trying to pursue modeling while I was doing bodybuilding. So I was like, I always need to be shredded in case an opportunity presents itself. And that honestly made me really unhealthy. There was actually a time where I was working as a personal trainer at a gym and I went to use the restroom and my mind like clicked off. It was one of those things like you do it so many times, you don't really have to think about it. Well, I'm sitting there, using the restroom peeing, and I see myself in the mirror and I think to myself, I'm not actually peeing in the bathroom. And I look down, I'm peeing in the trash can.
Oh,
my mind had like completely clicked off from just the high cortisol and the low fat. And I had no clue what was going on until I saw myself in the mirror and I was like, oh my goodness. And it still didn't even hit me. I needed to change something. So, ultimately it led from there and it progressed to, things started happening in life, like bad emotionally bad things started happening and I couldn't handle it anymore. And then it was like, boom, everything just started falling apart. And that's when I got into like forgetting who people were. I was asking my wife if life was real or if I was dead. Like it got crazy. My brain couldn't understand like life. It sounds so weird to even say that. And I couldn't comprehend life or like conversations anymore. I didn't even have the energy to have a conversation. Everything just became so hard to do.
And had you had any of these issues before?
So no, but it's kind of that thing where, now that you're healthy and what feeling good feels like, you can look back and be like, man, when I was younger, I might have had issues. I just didn't know and no one knew how to like talk to me about them. Right. So you start talking like ADD, ADHD, like not being able to focus. Like, I'm like, man, I was put in like special reading when I was younger because I couldn't focus. It's like, how long have I actually had issues, maybe pertaining to food or toxicities, and they just compounded?
And did you what was your instinct when you were feeling like this, or like what did your wife say? Like, did you try going to a doctor? What were you thinking?
So I guess I'll have to go back a little bit. When I first started getting like sick, what was happening to me was I was having episodes of like passing out. So it was like I would be having a conversation and then all of a sudden I wouldn't hit the ground, but if you were to talk to me, I couldn't respond.
Wow.
So I became like mute basically. And I tried to like, tough it out. Like men always say that, tough it out. I tried to do that. And then it was happening when I was driving. So I would go to drive and I'd be like, Sadie, my wife's name's Sadie. I'd be like, I think I'm going to pass out. She'd be like, pull over. And then
Wow.
I would just go like mute. So she eventually made me go to the ER and a slew of tests. And this is really when it started. It would happen like, for 2 minutes, 5 minutes at a time. And then it started happening for like 30 minutes that I was like incoherent. And I just started getting passed around literally from ER to specialist to specialist. I mean, they were cutting off moles, cutting out lipoma. I was seeing everyone, literally from my brain to my heart to just everything. It was crazy. My skin.
This episode is brought to you by Optimal Carnivore. Many people I talk to struggle to get enough organ meat on a carnivore diet. There's debate about whether you need to eat organs or not, but I like to supplement with organ meats and it makes me feel better, and many carnivores would agree. Optimal Carnivore was created by carnivores for carnivores. In fact, I was consulted during the formulation, which is pretty cool. They have a unique organ complex that combines 9 different organs: liver, brain, heart, and more, all from grass-fed, grass-finished animals in New Zealand. And taking 6 capsules a day is the same as eating an ounce of raw liver. And it's completely freeze-dried, and they use a very high-quality process to retain all the nutrients. You can use the link in the episode description or the link in my Instagram bio and use the code Carnivore10 to save at checkout and support the show. Thank you.
What were you starting to think it was, or what were the doctors concluding, or were they just like kind of mystified?
Yeah. So because of the bodybuilding diet and having that cheat meal, I was like, man, I think I made myself diabetic. I was like, because I eat, a plate of brownies, which it's so unhealthy, that bodybuilders will kind of do that with that cheat meal. I was like, I made myself diabetic because I try to eat so clean for a week and then it's like, just go after everything.
Yeah.
So that's initially what I started thinking, but it felt like an infection. And that's what I would tell everybody. It's like, I feel like I have an infection inside of me and that's what's going on. And everyone was like, no, everything's fine. My white blood cell count was like a 3.8. So it was in a disease range, right? Like,
yeah, it's low,
extremely low. And they were just like, oh, that's just normal for you. I was like, you don't even know my baseline. I was like, so, yeah, it was just getting tossed around like that. At this point, it hit a point where I thought I was dying. So, and I even was like writing things in my phone, like in case I did die, and my wife would get my phone, like she would know like things, what to do, what I needed to say to her in case I didn't say it. I mean, I was bedridden for 3 months, man.
crazy,
like, incoherent, and she was my rock. So,
and like when you were bedridden, what were they trying to like treat you for? What was
depression?
Yeah,
Out of everything. And I had low tests on, so I mean, like my lipase, my lactase, my liver function, like all these functions were off. They just weren't doing anything about it. The one thing was my cortisol was like 3 times the level. So they were talking about Cushing's at the time, but I don't look like somebody that would have Cushing's, you know what I mean? Because there is like an image based on that. So they were like, you might have it, but we don't think you do. And during this period, I was learning functional health. So I studied under a doctor, his name's Stephen Cabral. And I then started doing my own testing because at this point I was like, you guys are unreliable. You know, you're pointing me to all these directions. And at this point, I feel like it's just killing me because I'd gotten so many CT scans, all this stuff. And I just felt awful. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy. And then how did you find your way towards like this carnivore lifestyle or low carb eating, and how did that help you?
Yeah. So, in the period of being sick, I was learning. So I started with diet, right? And the first diet I tried was Medical Mediums. I don't know if you heard of him. Okay. So it's this guy that promotes a diet. He's not a doctor or anything. And it's all plant-based, but it's like, I guess, strategic plant-based.
Okay.
So I went that route. I went vegetarian, vegan, and then I even hit a point where I was like, I'm not being diligent enough. I'm not doing this hard. So I'll just go fruitarian. So for a couple months, I went raw fruit. Obviously, my test plummeted. My hair was falling out. My nails were literally splitting vertically. So like not chipping. Yeah, like splitting vertically. And then I was like, I'm dying, man. This is awful. I actually had a buddy who was doing carnivore. He's a farmer, looks fantastic. You know what I mean? Extremely strong. And I was like, let me start diving into this. So I initially dove in doing Paul Saladino's animal based. And I did have some knowledge at the time. I'd been studying, you know, all kinds of things, supplements, all this stuff. So I dove in doing that. It made me feel significantly better, especially like the mental clarity, right? And it was like, wow, this is gonna work. And I just kept researching, listening to your podcast, Sean Baker's, you know, Paul Saladino, Nutrition with Judy, like so many just brilliant people. And then I kind of just started putting it together. I did have lingering yeast issues. So my body has had high yeast issues that I've dealt with for a while. And I was like, okay, you know, sugar feeds yeast. And I'm still seeing it on my skin, you know, tinea versicolor and toenail fungus and stuff. So I was like, well, I'm going to cut the fuel. So then I went full carnivore, and then I haven't looked back. It's been 8 months, and, you know, I feel fantastic.
That's awesome. And what are some of the first things that like cleared up for you, and like how did that evolve in your health?
Yeah, so going full carnivore, I will say depression completely lifted. And I mean, there was a point where I was suicidal to the point where I looked at my wife and I asked her to, like, this is going to sound crazy, but take my life. I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. Like, this is awful. She was breaking down as like a human, like, and seeing that, I was like, this is awful.
Imagine.
Yeah, it was a struggle, man, for sure. But yeah, like the depression, the anxiety lifted really quick. And then the clarity came in. And that's one of those things, you don't realize how bad of brain fog that you have until it's gone. So I would say within like the first month, you know, those symptoms really kicked over. So, and then from there it was my recovery transitioned extremely well. I mean, I could put my body through the toughest workout and be fine. And then it was my strength and my weight came back. I don't even have to work out nearly as hard as I did when I was trying to bodybuild and look a certain way. And now I can do, you know, 30 to 45 minutes in the gym and be equally as strong and look as just as good.
Yeah, that's awesome. It seems like it's completely changed your life.
Yeah.
And how did your wife respond? I imagine she was elated, but was she like concerned for you trying these different diets and stuff?
Man, so it's kind of been a tough one, and I kind of burned her out because each time I would learn about, let's say, an avenue, it was like, this is it, eureka. You know, I had that eureka moment, and it weighed on her. So she kind of got to the point where I had to be careful with what I was telling her, because it was just another thing, you know. So it was more or less, I just started doing this diet. She kind of left me to it, and then when she started seeing results, she was like, this is working. And she would then communicate to people like, he's a changed person. Like, you don't understand, like, this is really doing something in him. And that's kind of the story she shares now as well.
That's awesome. That's so cool. And like, talk about how this has affected like other aspects of your life, like your coaching. How has that changed, and how do you help people through that?
Yeah. So, like I said, I've been working out for 20 years. So I've been coaching for a while. Most of the time it used to be for free. And now I've been blessed to be able to make a business out of it. We do own a gym as well. So it's really cool, but it has created a hunger to acquire the truth. Right. And at this point, when someone comes to me, and most of the time it is with like an ailment, a health ailment, I can just tell them, the truth that I feel that I've learned. And being that I have done almost every angle of the nutrition aspect, I'm like, listen, this is where I was on the vegan vegetarian diet, and this is what I feel it did to my body. And now I'm over here, and this is the way I feel you should eat. Our body should eat based on these facts. If you need information, here it is. So I'm coaching from a more rounded aspect and less of a just kind of like a macro coach. You know what I mean? Just like here's this, take it and do your thing. So yeah.
Yeah, that's great that you can help people beyond just, obviously like how you look physically is often a manifestation of your internal health and how well you can digest and metabolize things. But being able to help people with other problems besides just looking good, I imagine is very fulfilling.
Yeah, absolutely. A goal of mine this year is to try to open a clinic, man, because ultimately that like we do have a gym and I do have an area where I can pull in some healing modalities that those who struggle even with like cancer or something, they could come in and maybe hear an alternative to chemo or radiation and, some red light or an oxygen type chamber or something like that, something different uh, than the normal routine.
That's really cool. And have you always been like very entrepreneurial? It's awesome seeing you like take on all these different things.
Um, so I've always been I don't want to follow I don't want to follow everyone else. So it just so happens that is entrepreneurial, right? My family were, and I'm not saying anything against it by any means, but they were, 9 to 5, and they kind of like just followed the typical path of, majority of people. And I was like, I don't want to do that. And it started with the military. No one in my family had joined the military. So I was like, I'm going. And I needed it because I was a troublemaker. So went there, and then from there, graduated with a degree in ministry and leadership, and then got a gym. And there was at one point where I owned a donut shop. That was crazy. And then, yeah, I've started coaching and then been doing that ever since.
That's really cool. And do you feel um like having your body and your mind under control more with this kind of way of eating has helped you in those respects, help you be more entrepreneurial?
Oh, absolutely. Even on every level, having a clear mind, operating from a sense of calm, really improves every aspect of your life, right? Business can be frustrating, or even just a normal job is frustrating. And if you're operating in a stance of anger, that's not going to be very effective. But if I'm able to, retain that and stay calm, uh, you can get to a solid outcome. And I believe this diet allows you to do that. Instead of operating out of survival, you can be at peace. And there's many other things, my spiritual life has greatly improved because I'm not like, I don't feel like I'm dying every single day, which, yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing to see how much it's helped you. And Trevor, what if folks want to work with you, if they want to get your help, how can they reach out to you? What's the best way to start that?
Yeah. So most of my stuff is on Instagram. So Trevor Lee 89. I like to just have a conversation, and even if it's just, you've gone through something that sounds similar to me, and I can have a conversation with you, and that's all the help I can give, I want to do that. So I always tell people I'm not a salesman. I'm here to help. I have to make money to support, my family, but at the end of the day, I'm just here to help.
That's awesome. Well, I'll definitely have links to that in the show notes. And thank you so much for coming on, Trevor. It's awesome to meet you and hear your story. It's super inspiring, and definitely appreciate you sharing it.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a blast.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Carnivore Cast. If you enjoyed this episode, please review on iTunes. It really helps us out, and share it with a friend. What questions would you like answered, or who would you like to hear from in the carnivore or research community? You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at CarnivoreCast, or go to carnivorecast.com. You can also email me at info@carnivorecast.com. I'd love to hear from you. Until next time, keep it carnivore.